This is the Mox Team Zirconia podcast, episode 10, Drain the Reservoir.
Welcome to Mox Team Zirconia. I'm Graham.
And I'm Daniel.
And I'm Colin, and we are your hosts.
That's right. We are a podcast about Magic the Gathering for everybody.
We hope that this podcast can help you if you're playing Magic at tournaments, from Friday night to the Grand Prix. We want to inspire you to try out your own brews or pick up an untested deck, like one of these guys that we make on the show. Try it out and then change it however you feel like it works best for you.
That's right. Our immediate goal is always, and will always be, to make the next deck better than the last one. We want to continue getting better at making decks, at learning from our triumphs and from our mistakes, and overall refining our brewing techniques.
Yep, and remember, you can follow us on Twitter at MoxZirconia, and let us know what you think of the podcast, or what you'd like us to talk about, or what you'd like to hear. We'd love to know what you think. And we are also appearing in all the major podcast network searches, so tell all your friends that they can search for Mox Team Zirconia and listen in as well. Also, go to YouTube and subscribe, because we put all of our episodes up on YouTube as well, in case that is an easier way for you to listen to the show and spread the word there. And we're hoping that pretty soon we can start increasing our YouTube content and doing some fun, shorter videos that are going to be great as well.
Yeah, hopefully based around me being tall or something. Wasn't that the... Sorry, I don't want to spoil it.
Well, then we'll just tell them it's about Colin and I being short.
Dang it, that was the other half of the joke. Now that people know how the videos go.
Now that they all know that there's a massive height disparity between us on this podcast. Yeah, that's going to be good. Yeah, we're going to do fun things. We're going to talk about... We're going to talk about Magic mechanics for beginners, and we're going to do that in kind of a fun way to make it visual. And I have been inventing cards, so I'm going to do a series called Unsolicited R&D, where I tell Magic R&D what cards they forgot and missed from the sets, and it's going to be fun. We're going to do, basically, the more audience we get, the more we can just expand and do more fun things. So tell everybody.
Yes.
Okay, well... Now that that's out of the way, how did the testing go last week, guys? Normally, I'm the tester, but I had to sit this one out because I was out of town this past weekend.
So I was kind of the lead on the testing effort. So, first of all, I just want to say I really like this deck. It's totally my style of deck. I love playing little creatures and tokens and kind of just out, as I like to say, going under the other strategy that I'm going against. I just love that feeling of like a big, clunky, powerful deck trying to get on its feet, and then you kind of just kill them before they get their feet under them. So
yeah,
yes, that's how this deck kind of played out. It's very aggressive, and when I wasn't aggressive, things didn't go nearly as well. But I did have this option of kind of playing tokens and trying to eke out those few points of damage, even when I didn't start out super fast, but. My draws are pretty good, I think.
We should just go over the deck real quick as a refresher for our listeners who may have missed the podcast last week.
So yeah, it's basically just a red-black aggro deck that's kind of more Eldrazi focused than zombie, or just the straight, just all the best aggressive black-red cards. Well, I'm trying to think of what, like, I know I've seen people playing with this deck, but there's like a zombie one, and then there's a one that's just kind of like good stuff creatures, like the
well, there's vampires too.
Yeah, I don't think that one is as played. There's the one that uses the 2/3. Oh god, what's it called? The 1 red for a 2. What's a 1/2, but then it gets +1/+1 if you have an artifact.
Inventor's Apprentice.
Inventor's. Okay, so there's a red black deck that's kind of more zombie based, and then there's one that's sort of like good, cheap, efficient creatures like Inventor's Apprentice. And this one is like kind of a colorless Eldrazi theme. So there's like a third. Well, and then Graham, you said earlier that there was a vampire version. So this is the fourth iteration of the red black aggro deck. But I think the reason that this deck keeps popping up so much really has more to do with the card Unlicensed Disintegration, which is just maybe one of like the top 5 cards in Standard right now. It is really good. Like paying 3 mana to destroy a creature is already a card that gets played. So that was the other thing I noticed is that, I mean, I kind of knew this already, but the testing process reinforced that Scrap Heap Scrounger is really good. So that's kind of like
yes.
That's kind of like the things that make the deck go. Like it might not look like much, but you have these 2 like overpowering cards in your deck that work really well together because Unlicensed Disintegration is great in an aggressive deck, and Scrap Heap Scrounger is probably the best aggressive creature in the format. So you get both of those things. So that's kind of what makes Red Black go and what makes it a popular archetype, I think. So yeah, I guess I'll just kind of talk about the matchups a little bit. Played Green Black Delirium. I think their hands were all right, especially in game 2. It seemed to come down to whether or not the Grim Flare got into play early, and also who went first mattered a lot. Also, the Liliana Planeswalker never came down, which I think was a powerful card against me. And I don't think Ishkanah did either.
Didn't see those two. And didn't see any Kalitas either.
Yeah, I think they were just kind of weak hands against aggro. And so I ended up winning 2 out of 3. I mean, it's an example of the power of the deck that even though it never got a great hand, that it still beat me in game 2. I mean, my hand wasn't great either, but I think when you have subpar draws, the deck that's less reliant on synergy often does better. So, Grim Flare's just a really, really good card, and it was hard for me to deal with when that got going. The next round played against Mardu Vehicles. This seemed like a really good matchup, actually, because when I played my Weaponcraft Enthusiast and made servos, they both traded up against the Veteran Motorists, which is a really bad deal for them. And they're also really good for chump blocking Cultivator's Caravan, while I sort of swung back into these board stalls would build up, and then the Flare Drone, which is a surprising all-star in the deck, would give me inevitability. So we probably talked about this card a little bit, but it's a 3/1 that whenever I play a colorless creature, I get to do 1 damage to the opponent. And actually, it filled a lot of roles. It both held off pretty much all of the little creatures because it's a 3/1 first strike, and the only thing that can attack into it is Cultivator's Caravan. And then it also let me win these board stalls because I would slowly ping away at their life with the pinging ability. So it was really strong in this matchup. A lot of the cards in my deck are just really good in this matchup.
Yeah, because you're playing creatures every time and getting these creature presence, and half the time the vehicles deck is playing a vehicle, which is kind of like almost half of a creature, and you can just get ahead and around them pretty easily.
Yeah. I mean, the best thing against me was the Smuggler's Copter, of course, but I have answers. Like I have 7 cards in the deck that can destroy it. So, and it's not like, I mean, it's not like you just win when you're hitting with Smuggler's Copter. I mean, it gives you an advantage, but you don't just like automatically win. So, and also you have to expend a lot of resources to crew it, and so I can attack back when that's happening. Like, so, yeah, that seemed like a really good matchup. And then the last round,
how'd you do in that matchup?
How'd I do? I won 2 games in a row.
Nice, 1 and 2.
Yeah, and then round 3 played against the Blue-White Flash deck, the other heavy hitter in the format after Black-Green Delirium. Game 1 didn't really have a lot of early defenses, and I had like the quick Bomat Courier Scrap Heap Scrounger draw. I think I was on the play too, and it just kind of had the like quick aggro draw that he didn't really have good answers to. I mean, Unlicensed Disintegration, like if they have a slow draw, Unlicensed Disintegration is extra bad because they're like, well, I'll just play like a larger creature and then sort of stem the bleeding a little bit, and it's just like that card just slams the door on any chance of coming back. So I think these kind of like real aggressive decks, without sort of like these control decks in the format, the aggressive decks feel really well positioned to me right now. I mean, there's the Liliana problem, and obviously the opponent with the Delirium deck didn't draw it, but yeah, I mean, there were things, there were a few things played, and it just like wasn't quite quick enough to stop the bleeding on the attack. So there's like Reflector Mage and stuff like that, but I just kind of had the drop.
Too little, too late.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I'd noticed too is that in both of these white weenie deck matchups, Thraben Inspector was like the card I least wanted to see. Like if you're playing Bomat Courier and they play Thraben Inspector, you just get like the biggest frown. Yeah.
Especially when they play a Smuggler's Copter on turn 2.
Yeah, but it didn't even need to be Smuggler's Copter. It was just the fact that they basically negate your Bomat Courier for like no cards. Like,
yeah, so that's an interesting thing that I noticed too. So I did actually play a few games with this deck, and I played 6 games, I believe. And after game 1, I ran into Thraben Inspector, and the first thing I did was I sideboarded out every single Bomat card.
Yeah, I mean,
so and after that, it was the deck worked without a hitch. I ended up throwing in the Death Stalkers, which are a 4-drop red black.
Oh yeah, you were
haste Eldrazi.
I remember you were really into that in the
and they
part.
really paid off when you have an Eldrazi Mimic in play and you drop a 5/4 or 5/3 or whatever the heck it is trample, and then you have 2 of them.
Interestingly, I thought the Mimic was one of the least impressive cards for me. Like that was the one I was least happy to that competed with the Bomat Courier for my 2 least favorite cards in the deck.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm still on the fence a little bit about how I like the Mimic. I like the Mimic's potential more than I like the card itself, and I think that's just because I only ever saw it in 1 game. So there's only 2 in the deck, and out of the 6 games I played, I only saw it in play 1 time, and it worked when I had it in play. And it got me a whole bunch of extra damage that I wouldn't have normally gotten. And I think that works really well because we are dropping creatures every single turn, essentially. If we're doing it right, that is the creature that we want in play for that instance. It kind of hurts the way that it hurts it the way we have the deck built last week, because there's nothing in the deck that has power greater than 3 when it enters the battlefield.
Vile Aggregate does. I'm pretty sure Vile Aggregate enters as whatever.
Okay, so yeah. But besides Vile Aggregate, nothing else enters the battlefield at power greater than 3. Which is kind of makes Eldrazi Mimic less powerful, but I also use its ability when I dropped a Forerunner of Slaughter into play. And so on turn, I want to say 3 or 4, I was swinging for 9 damage because I had the Eldrazi Mimic become a 3/2.
That card is sick. How does Forerunner of Slaughter not see more play?
I don't know either. When I had a Flare Drone and a Forerunner of Slaughter in play, my opponent always took out the Forerunner of Slaughter. Didn't care about the Flare Drone. Well, cared about it, but cared way more about the Forerunner of Slaughter than he did about the Flare Drone, which I thought was a testament to how good the Forerunner of Slaughter is, and it is very good.
Oh, and actually, it reminded me too that so other than the Eldrazi Mimic, some other cards that were kind of meh were Bearer of Silence, kind of slow.
I was disappointed with Bearer of Silence as well. Maybe that's because my opponent was playing a token engine deck. So the ability of having your opponent sacrifice a creature is not really that useful when they've got like 6 human tokens sitting in play.
And then Voldaran Pariah was pretty bad too. I don't think this deck actually doesn't make that many creatures that you're just like willy-nilly wanting to throw them to the Pariah. Like,
right. Or if
it was hard for me to get up to that.
Yeah.
That being said, I did get a win directly because of the Weapon Craft Enthusiast Voldaran Pariah combo. I was able to play a Weapon Craft Enthusiast 1 turn. I was able to hardcast a Voldaran Pariah the following turn and crack it immediately, sacrificing the Weapons Craft Enthusiast and 3 servos, which allowed me to clear my opponent's board and get all of my Eldrazi through for lethal damage. That was pretty cool. I mean, I felt pretty happy about that.
But it could have been a lot of things, right? Like the Pariah could have been a lot of different like 5-mana cards that sort of are blowouts.
Absolutely. I think that in this particular deck, Voldaran Pariah is probably forced in there a little bit. It's cool that I got it to work, and I'm pretty happy about that. But if I was going to take this deck and tune it, I would take the pariahs out.
Let's see some other things. Ruins of Oran Reef, not that exciting. I didn't like that it came. I didn't like that it came into play tapped. That was kind of annoying.
I wasn't too worried about that. I liked having the Ruins of Oran Reef. I actually didn't need the Aether Hub ever.
But what if Ruins of Oran Reef was like a Westvale Abbey, for instance? Like, couldn't that be?
Well, I liked putting counters on my Eldrazi. I did that a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
actually.
from a fun perspective, maybe. I just
Well, from a damage perspective, I thought it was super useful. Those aforementioned Duststalkers get big when a +1/+1 counter makes a lot of difference when it has trample. I think that card has trample. Maybe I'm talking out of my butt.
I'm honestly not trying to say that Ruins isn't like a playable card. It was like one of the cards that I was like, I gotta put this in play tapped. Like the effect is kind of like small. Outnumber. Outnumber was fine, but I definitely think that like it would be better as galvanic. Galvanic bombardment.
Possibly. That's another one where I actually liked Outnumber because we're playing so many creatures all the time. There was only once or twice when I had one in my hand where I was going to be dealing less than 3 damage. So basically I had a bolt in my hand at all times.
Really?
If I had an Outnumber.
Wow,
yeah.
That's not how it went for me.
That's definitely... I always had tons of creatures in play all the time.
Like,
I never had an issue getting creatures.
What about like Incendiary Flow? I mean, that seems like it might be better than Outnumber. I mean, it is nice that Outnumber can kill like a Copter, but I mean, going like...
I liked Outnumber because there was a couple times where my opponent had got their tireless tracker up to like 6/5.
Oh yeah.
Outnumber took it out, no problem.
Huh.
Yeah, and Incendiary Flow is pretty bad against Grimflayer too. So I don't know.
Well, it's not bad against it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just right after you've hit, yeah.
But in this deck, you're trying to curve out. You're trying to play your removal later, right? Take out the bigger threats so that your curved out creatures get through, I think, right?
Right. I agree with that. And Outnumber lends itself to that because it takes a few turns before it becomes powerful enough because, of the nature of what you're doing. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I'm kind of on the fence still about Weaponcraft Enthusiast.
Yeah.
It was nice to have those blockers there that you didn't have to worry about sacrificing your damage-dealing creatures to an opponent's attack. Plus, it fueled the Outnumber.
And Vile Aggregate.
Really nicely.
Yeah.
And Vile Aggregate. And it also hit the Flare Drone for 2 damage.
Yeah. I did that a lot, actually. Did the 2 damage, but...
Well, the good news is you guys are both right as far as the removal goes, because this is the kind of thing where since there's so few removal slots, there's like 7, that card or sideboarding the correct cards in is really good, and I think that Outnumber and Incendiary Flow both have a case to be made. So,
absolutely, yeah, it's all about the deck you're playing against. It could go either way. In fact, I would probably take the Bearer of Silence out and either put in 2 more removal cards or bump up another creature of some sort.
Okay, so let's wrap this up a little bit. So do you guys, how competitive do you feel like this deck is? I think we had a relatively small sample size of our testing, but it did pretty well in our testing. So what do you guys think? Is this something that you could take to a Grand Prix or something once it's been tuned a little bit and feel like you're gonna do okay?
I'm not sure, but
I think so.
But I would definitely have fun with this deck at FNM for sure. Like I would.
Yeah, maybe not a Grand Prix, but certainly at FNM.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure, because I do think that there were some flaws that need to be worked out. Like I think some of the small creatures were kind of unimpressive, and like I said, I didn't like the Pariah either. I think the core cards in the deck, like the Flare Drone, the Forerunner, the Vile Aggregate, like that core of creatures there is really good. Oh, plus Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Scrap Heap Scrounger, and even the Weaponcraft Enthusiast worked really well.
Yeah, not as much for me on that one, but I think it's fairly important in the deck to like make the Aggregate and the Flare Drone work a little better. I can see cutting one of those, but yeah, I definitely like the core of the deck. Sometimes I get a little bit outclassed by the green-black, because the green-black creatures are just really strong, like the early ones, and I'm a little bit worried about Liliana, but I think that's another reason to play Incendiary Flow or maybe Ruinous Path, just to have another way to deal with Planeswalkers. So
Yeah, the other thing that I discovered was once my opponents got some just one or two creatures that had a power or toughness greater than 3, I kind of hit a roadblock. It was difficult for me to get damage around. Part of that was because they had so many little token blockers, but I think that there's a ceiling for the deck in terms of damage that becomes problematic, and so we just need to find a way to get damage through some sort of evasion.
I really like Vile Aggregate though. I think that card, it's really strong, and I think that's the card that's kind of the hidden. Well, it's not hidden. It's in plain sight. But I mean, that card I think is pretty darn good in Standard actually. So that was kind of my takeaway from this. That was surprising. Like I was like, I don't even know if it necessarily has to be. I think Red Black's a really good shell for it because you get the Forerunner Slaughter, for example, and the Scrap Heap Scrounger, which are both really good colorless things to pump the aggregate. But yeah, I always liked that card and was surprised it didn't see more play. And I think part of the reason was because it didn't have these cards like Scrounger and like Bomet Courier. It just didn't have the early colorless things to pump it. And now we do. And I think maybe it has a chance to shine a little bit.
All right. Well, that was great. Great deck, guys. And thank you guys for testing that out and giving your update. And I'm pretty happy with it. So, hey, go out and make those changes. Get rid of that Pariah and put something better in there. Get rid of Barrier of Silence and put something better. We've actually had a couple of good comments on cards that we've sort of forgotten and missed in our previous live brews on our tapped out already. And I love those conversations. And so please continue those on our tapped out. Because having some good thoughts and some obvious cards like, oh, how could we have forgot that? That's the kind of stuff we want to hear. And we also want to hear if you go out and play the decks. And so yeah, send us your whole lists. We'll look at all of them. We love it. We geek out on it, obviously, and it's great. So cool. Let's move on and let's talk a little bit about GP Knoxville that just happened. Basically, there weren't a whole lot of surprises in the top 8 other than how undiverse it was. I've already heard some people complaining about this format as, it's a 2 or 3 deck format. I would say last week I would have said, oh yeah, it's a 3 deck format because Mardu or Boros vehicles is definitely a thing, but man, we're seeing those guys slide, and Black-Green Delirium and White-Blue Flash are just taking over. 4 copies of Black-Green Delirium in the top 8 and 3 copies of Flash. So what do you guys, how are you feeling? Do we have at least some diversity of the flavors of Black-Green Delirium in this one? Not really. Emrakul, Ishkana, Mind-Rack Demon. I guess 1 versus 3 Mind-Rack Demons.
Don't forget about Liliana.
Yeah.
Is that no one's playing like the Verdurous Hulk version?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not seeing
everyone's just playing like straight up like
yeah,
like you would have.
We get some playing the noxious.
So Brad Nelson won. He's like a longtime pro, and I was kind of expecting to like look at his deck and see like some. Here's Brad Nelson's innovations that like really push, but it's like no, it's very like straightforward. Just kind of.
This must have been a really annoying tournament in the sense that these guys are all playing the same deck. It's just a matter of who gets a better draw. That must have been really frustrating.
I mean, not necessarily. Like Brad Nelson won the tournament. Brian Brown Doohan came in 9th. Like, that's not necessarily better draws. That's like, that looks like better players are doing well.
Well, possibly, but my point is the decks are so similar that at some point you're just playing copies of them against each other.
Yeah, that's weird though. It looks like almost everybody moved away from the like more aggressive. Maybe the more aggressive Delirium deck isn't as good in the mirror or something. I'm not really sure. I mean, I haven't. Don't have a ton of experience with it, but yeah.
Well, I guess it's worth noting, though, that it was a Jeskai control deck that came in 2nd, so Red, White, Blue, randomly, came in 2nd place in a sea of Black-Green Delirium and White-Blue Flashes.
Yeah, I'm playing some interesting things, too. Radiant Flames is a card that I'm surprised to see. 2 in a red with Converge, and it deals X damage to each creature where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast it. That seems surprising. So I guess you could get up to 5 damage, right? If you overspent for it.
Oh no, it
can't.
maxes out
No,
at
it's
3.
maxed
So
out at
why
3.
would you play
No, it
this card instead
It
of?
got played. It got played in the Pro Tour. Like Carlos Ramao, I think how do you pronounce his name? Ramayo. And it's a Brazilian name. I don't know, but or Portuguese. He had Radiant Flames in his Jeskai deck that he top 8'd the Pro Tour with. So that was an established card.
Isn't Incendiary Flow just strictly better?
No, Flames does it to all creatures.
Oh, got it. That's what happened.
Yeah, it's
okay.
sweeper. So
To each creature. That's the word each. Is I was just looking at it going, that's weird. Why is it doing that? Okay. Now I'm on board. All right. Cool.
So the core of the deck seems to be, in terms of the control elements, is this Glimmer of Genius is the card draw, Harness Lightning, the chosen removal spell, and then you use Gear Hulk to flash back the Glimmer of Genius. So that's kind of like the core of the deck. And then, there's like individual choices about like, how many counter spells, which ones, which like spot removal spells, but that's kind of like that Gear Hulk Glimmer combo is kind of like the center of the deck. I think you figure a deck like this will be strong in a field full of Delirium because things like, I was going to say Liliana isn't as good. It's still good because you can use it as like a raised dead that like has this game-ending ultimate ability, but it's not quite as backbreaking as it is against like creature decks. So you kind of dodge the worst of it there, I think.
Agreed. I think it's great. Good job, Bradley Hill, because it's nice to see a different list up there in the top 8.
Yeah, and this very strict only black, green, Delirium, white, blue, flash metagame.
I still think Torrential Gear Hulk is a surprise for me just because of its casting cost. I know saw a lot of play at the Pro Tour, which was early in the format, and then it's kind of tapered off a bit. But actually, there was a couple decks in playing it in Modern last weekend too, and it's just I realize it's like a giant Snapcaster mage, but man,
Yeah, what were they flashing back in Modern?
they're flashing back Cryptic Command.
Cryptic Command.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
So
In a control deck, Colin, you don't have to worry about how long things take as much because you have that time. That's the whole point, right?
That's true. Like I said, I'm just surprised to see it so much. I mean, I know it's great, but I'm just surprised.
I'm going through this list of decks and I'm just like picking out the ones that aren't. There's so few that aren't green, black, Delirium or white, blue, flash. There's like this white, red mid-range deck that I haven't seen before. It's interesting. It's funny though, like I don't actually find formats like this to be that depressing at all. Like I know some people feel like, oh, it's like all these 2 decks, and I'm just like, first of all, it's 2 decks. I've seen formats where the only good deck was like, there were formats where I think it was usually Necropotence was at fault, but there were decks where standard formats where there was like only really one deck you should be playing, and you had to kind of really convince yourself to play something else. So yeah, and I think in terms of deck design, it's actually really helpful to just have 2 enemies that you're going after. That's like a
Exactly.
I mean, I've often built decks in formats where I literally only thought about one deck because I just hated losing to this one particular deck so much. So, Extended was infamous for that format that existed before Modern. Like there was this deck called High Tide, which is like this crazy combo deck that was really, really good. And I was just like, I'm not going to play anything that doesn't have a good matchup against High Tide because the deck was just so strong. So
yeah, I definitely think that with a format where you can predict so much of the metagame, you can really target it and you can come at it with a brew that people aren't expecting and they won't be ready for. And I feel like, stable quote unquote formats are begging to be shaken up, And so I think that that's a good goal. I think that's a good goal for our live brew today because we know, okay, we need to have an answer for Liliana. We need to have an answer for Grim Flayer. We need to have an answer for Spell Queller. We need to have an answer for Archangel Avacyn. And we just need to kind of know that those are the things. And that's not too bad of a list to target. So,
I mean, one thing about both of these decks is that they're actually not that fast. like you have time to set up in this environment, so we can like hedge off either speed components or creature removal, like early creature removal, that kind of thing, because we're not dying that quickly.
Yeah, earlier on, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks ago, the format seemed to be a lot faster. You seemed the combo decks with Aetherflux Marvel were basically like, if you can't answer a game-winning card on turn 4, then you're toast. That definitely has seemed to slow down quite a bit.
I mean, obviously, there's still some like white-red vehicles and like red-black aggro and stuff, but you know, just looking at this list, it's like, wow, that's like all these like. I mean, white-blue flash is somewhat fast, but it's not like it's more like a few quick creatures, and you know, there's nothing that's like. I think Smuggler's Copter is the only thing that I would consider like an efficient beater in the deck. So, and that's like a 2-card combo, but mostly it's just like I play this 2/1 flying creature or like this 2/3 creature that bounces something to your hand or whatever. So if you're not doing something that the blue-white deck attacks, like some strategy that attacks, which is basically playing out creatures as your defense, then I think you're in okay shape.
Right. So the only caveat to that you have time to set things up is if the Delirium deck really goes crazy and gets a lot of stuff into the graveyard, you do have to worry about Emrakul landing on you, because all of these decks are running Emrakul still.
Yeah, I mean there is a clock in the sense that there is an inevitable win condition that happens, like with either Liliana or Emrakul, or sort of this counter magic blockade that the blue-white deck sets up, where they sort of have this clock, but they have too many control elements for you to stop them. Like Selfless Spirit like protects their creature, that kind of thing, or Archangel Avacyn protects things. So it almost seems like in this environment better to just like kind of go for like sort of the Aetherworks Marvel type win condition, where like basically I think what's keeping Aetherworks Marvel in check is this blue-white deck, because if it was just black-green Delirium, then that deck would just run roughshod over black-green Delirium. But I think the flash decks are really good against it. So,
although I think Aetherworks Marvel itself costing 4 blanks Spell Queller, doesn't it? I think you have to. Is it 3 or less for Spell Queller?
No, it's 4.
It is 4.
Spell Queller counters Aetherworks Marvel.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's kind of a problem.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, 4 or
anyway,
less. Sure enough. Okay.
I feel like we've been talking in generalities too much. We should move on to specifics.
Indeed. So, I think that this week we should attempt a crazy deck they'll never see coming with a dirtily card that can actually prolong the game, which is what we want. And I think we should play around with Aetherflux Reservoir, which is a 4-mana artifact which says whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. And then you can pay 50 life, yes, 50, and Aetherworks Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. So I don't know why you'd ever deal 50 damage to a creature when you could damage to a player, but oh well. But basically, if you're at 51 life and they're at anything, you can kill them. So
unless you're playing the mirror.
Unless you're playing the mirror. Yeah. Exactly.
That would be such a kick in the pants. You come up with this like ridiculous Aetherflux Reservoir deck, and you go to Friday Night Magic and you just play against another one. You're like, what's happening to me? Cool. I'm excited to see what will happen.
Yeah, I think this is an intriguing card. To me, it seems like the second ability is far more useful than the first. I'm sure that the enter the bat or the spell casting gain 1 life ability will be useful, but I'm much more interested in its ability to end the game.
Sure, but I kind of feel like it depends on the direction we go, right? Because you can play a bunch of spells. There's nothing like Storm in Standard right now, but you can play a lot of spells to get that ticking up. And why does Smuggler's Copter wreck? Because it does 3 damage every turn. And why does Grim Flayer wreck? Because it's got trample, and anything you put in front of it just like knocks you down. So if you can get that 2 or 3 life from lifelink creatures or from gaining life from casting spells every turn, you can really, I feel like, extend your ability to stay in the game with some of these heavier beaters that are staples in the format right now.
Right, no doubt. I guess my point is that you're not going to get to 50 life just using Aetherflux Reservoir's ability on its
No.
own. That's
But it's
kind of
pretty
what I'm
good in
getting at.
multiples. Like, you gain 1 life twice for every spell, and then 2 life twice if you cast a second spell. So this is like one of the few ones that actually is pretty decent in multiples. But yeah, I think that we should decide. I think that doing a white base is really good, because I think one of the cards we really liked from a previous deck that I think is good, and this one is Gisela the Broken Blade, which is a 4-drop white flyer with flying first strike and lifelink, and a 4/3. And so I think that we should, if we could go down that road. I think that would be good.
There is an argument to be made for black, and I see your point about Gisela, and looking through all the white cards, the reason why you might be onto something is there's an awful lot of really useful cards for this deck that have a double white casting cost. That being said, there are some really interesting black or black-white cards that we should maybe consider.
Yeah, black-white is interesting to me too.
Yeah, Kalitas is a 4-drop lifelink creature, has some extra fun abilities. Even something like Sorin Grim Nemesis, he has a direct life drain ability to him. For 6 mana, you can use his ability the turn he drops and do a 6 life swing. A card like Cliffhaven Vampire is going to increase the amount of life is going to increase the effectiveness of the deck, because you're going to be gaining life, and it will then be flipping that damage onto your opponent. Same with if you can get a Defiant Bloodlord out. I realize it's a 7 casting cost creature, but it's a life gain deck. We're going to have that time and that mana to do that. Defiant Bloodlord is a 4/5 flyer for 7. Says whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life.
I think that everything is on the table so far. I'm definitely interested in the Cliffhaven Vampire. I think that's really good.
The one that I think that you might really like, Colin, is Campbell, Consul of Allocation. It's a 2/3 for 1 white black. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life.
Yeah, I definitely like that one too.
And there are some other spells that are interesting in black. Alms the Vein is just a 3 mana sorcery that target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. There is another similar spell called Essence Extraction, which allows you to deal 3 damage to a target creature and then you gain 3 life. That's interesting.
Okay, I would like to see if we can initially stick to a major white base so we can support double white casting costs, and see if we can stay to single pip in black, so that we don't run into too many mana issues, because I think we can do it. And then if we really feel like, there is a specific, like if this deck really needs Kalitas, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think that what we ought to focus on is building it in white, and then if there's something we just can't live without in black, see if there's a reason to put it in there.
I see some black cards I really like.
What are you seeing?
So I agree with the white plan. I really like Ailey Eternal Pilgrim.
I that was the next card out of my mouth, Daniel. You read my mind.
So, I mean, a 2/3 Death Touch for 2, that with, it doesn't have lifelink. I was thinking it had lifelink too, but that is a very strong defensive card right there, because you can brick the little creatures in the format, and you can trade with any large creature. And it's also got a really, well, let me just read the whole thing. So it's a 1 white, 1 black for a 2/3, and then it has 1 sacrifice another creature, so you can't sacrifice it, and you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And then it has another ability, which is 1 white, black, sacrifice another creature again, exile target non-land permanent. And you can only use that if you have 30 or more life, which we could theoretically get in this deck. So, and that like sacrifice ability where you gain life equal to the toughness, that's something that could gain a bunch of life, because it's like pretty easy to get high toughness. And so if we wanted to play like a bunch of walls or something, that could be a way to gain tons and tons of life for the Aetherflux Reservoir. So a lot of these life gain cards are kind of like small amounts, but that's like a card that could potentially gain tons of life.
So I really, really like Eiley, Eternal Pilgrim, and I like her for this deck. My biggest beef with her is that legendary tag. She's a card that I want 4 of, because I want as many of them in play as I can at any time. Sadly, she's legendary, so I can only have
But it's
one.
also a card you're going to be trading it off all the time.
Right.
I mean, it's like you want to just block and.
So here's the thing. So I also like Eiley. My question is, direction wise, do we want to go in a sacrifice creature direction, or do we want to go in a beat down lifelink direction? Are we playing walls and sacrificing creatures with like Zulaport Cutthroats to gain more life, or are we playing creatures and trying to go over the top or go under, to use Dan's words from earlier?
Well, that's a good question, Colin. Let's talk about lifelink creatures in white, because that's important. Do we think we have a viable deck in mono white just based on the
definitely
selection?
we do. Definitely we do.
I'm thinking we do. Based on what I've found, there are some pretty disgustingly good lifelink creatures in mono white.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything from Lone Rider, which is a 1/1 lifelink, but it flips to a 4/4 if you gained enough life in that turn.
1/1 first strike.
Not difficult
lifelink.
in this. First strike, indeed. There at your 3-drop, you have 2 great options. You have the Aerial Responder, which is flying, vigilance, and lifelink 2/3, which is just wow. That deck has absolutely annihilated me in limited several times. I have yet to see it in standard. You also have a Near Heath Chaplain at 4, which is a 3/1 lifelink that you can exile from your graveyard to put 2 1/1 white flying spirit creature tokens into play. That's a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1, really, if you think about it. Another 4-drop is the aforementioned Dizella the Broken Blade. You've also got the Angel of Invention at your 5-drop, as well as at your 6-drop, you have a potential game ender in Felidar Sovereign, which is Vigilance Lifelink 4/6, and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game.
So it's like that was like both creature and it's basically like another Aetherflux Reservoir, except
it's another win
there's
condition.
only 40 life instead of 51.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to gain 31 life.
Yeah. I think those are
So
all really good.
One consideration that I was going to bring up is that we might want to try and make like a lot of, well, I already don't like this idea. I haven't even said the idea and I already don't like it. What I was going to say was the Aetherflux Reservoir first ability, where if you play multiple spells in the same turn, you get extra life. And I was thinking maybe we want to keep the casting cost of our spells low so we can try and like rack up the life that way. But I kind of feel like maybe that's not.
That's kind of what I was getting at when I was originally talking about the Aetherflux Reservoir. Yeah, that first ability is going to be nice and useful, but I think it's not something that we want to focus on exploiting. I think we need to not worry about that ability and capitalizing on it, because I don't think that even if we do get it to a high point, unless we find that we're going to have tons of them in play, I don't think that's going to be our road to 50 life.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we definitely want to try and curve out with some creatures here. But that said, there's some other interesting things.
Well, can I bring up one with the curve out plan? Can I bring something up about that? I'm a little bit down on it just because the Aetherflux Reservoir doesn't contribute to that at all. It's like you're trying to attack, and then you have like Aetherflux Reservoir, and you're like, this isn't helping my plan of trying to kill the opponent. And I feel like that's just like a feel bad thing there that I wouldn't want in a deck I was playing, which is why I would prefer to head in like a more defensive direction, because then it makes the Reservoir feel like more of a control card where you can use it to keep yourself alive at like low levels and sort of build back up after you stabilize, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. This is not going to be an aggressive in the sense of trying to take your opponent's life down deck. Your lifelink creatures are mostly going to be sitting there blocking, maybe with the exception of those that have vigilance or when you have a good opening, hit them where you can. But I see this as being a hold the line and weight type of deck. Or maybe somewhere in between. You don't want to not attack when you have a good opening. So that needs to be a viable win condition, is just killing your opponent. But I don't see that as actually being the end result as much.
Okay. So if we ended up being more mid-rangey and sit back, we could do some more legendary creatures that have a little bit more specific abilities. Like, for example, if we're playing a Death Touch creature and we're playing flying lifelink creatures and we're having these different things, we could play Audric, Lunarch Marshal, who would basically make it so on every combat, if we have one lifelink creature in play, it turns all of our creatures into lifelink and gain a ton of life that way. I think what you're going for is slowing them down and sitting back and building up is just playing the new Thalia as well to make their creatures come into play tapped, which would potentially give us some openings.
Sure, that's something definitely to consider. My only arguments against those is if we are playing all creatures that have lifelink, we don't need Audric to give all the other creatures.
But we're definitely not. Like, even already on this list, we're not playing all creatures that have lifelink. And all creatures that have flying.
Which creature doesn't have lifelink?
doesn't have lifelink.
I thought we were going mono white.
Oh, no, I think we're trying to stay to single pip and black and keep it mostly white so that we don't have to worry about the casting cost of black cards, but definitely thinking that it increases the power to have some black in there.
Gotcha. Okay, well then in that case, I'm definitely down with Audric. He's a card I had considered as well until I kind of went down the mono white path and realized, well, everything's already got lifelink anyway. However, giving flying to everyone would be super. Just be super.
Or in the case of Eiley, you get Death Touch.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And Lone
That's
Rider
huge.
gets first strike. I mean, we're using a lot of different abilities that can really help out. And trample.
And
too.
it that rides as one
Right,
gives
exactly.
trample, yeah.
So I think that's kind of an interesting idea to go that way. So let's say we've got a bunch of creatures that we've talked about now, and so we can sort of tune and we can look at the number of creatures later. But let's talk about some other things that might round this out. So if we are going to be being a little more controlling and prolonging the game, I have some questions. Do we like Stasis Snare? Because that one has to be a creature.
I mean, it's a great removal spell.
Right.
It is.
Do we like Anguished Unmaking?
Oh, yeah.
So, so here's the question. So Anguished Unmaking costs you 3 life as part of the cost. And we are hopefully going to have a ton of extra life, but this might be slightly contrary to the Aetherflux Reservoirs, I guess, ultimate, if you want to call it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a powerful effect.
It is a powerful remover. There are still good powerful removal cards in white, though, especially if we're going to be playing a sit and wait game. There's Immolating Glare, and there's Blessed Alliance.
Oh, I love Blessed Alliance. Yeah, that was a card I was going to recommend. Yeah.
Yeah, so Blessed Alliance is really good. It's 2 for choose one or more, and it has an escalate cost of 2. Target player gains 4 life. Well, we know we like that. Untap up to 2 creatures. That could be useful for blocking, and target opponent sacrifices an attack.
Yeah,
creature, which is a great.
That's
removal.
the money ability right there. But I mean, the fact that it's both a removal spell and it gains you life, you got a lot. And the fact that we're not as aggressive, the fact that they have to attack us, I think is just fine.
Yeah, and another card that might be interesting for the deck is Dazzling Reflection. So it's not a good removal card in the sense of it doesn't take your opponent's creatures off the field, but it does prevent a lot of damage. So this might be a card to sideboard in when you have a very tall deck, but it says that you gain life equal to target creature's power, and the next time that creature would deal damage this turn, prevent that damage. This is also useful if you need to get over the hill in our deck, and say we're a couple life short of our total, and we have a Gisela in play. We can cast it on our Gisela and gain 4 life, just like that.
That's true, and flip a Lone Rider.
And
yeah. So here's an interesting tech that, to use the top level podcast term, they're always talking about. This is the best tech. If we're playing Blessed Alliance, which has one ability that also lets you untap creatures, there is an equipment card that costs 1 with equip of 2 called Stitcher's Graft, which gives equip creature +3/+3. It's got some bad stuff. Whenever it attacks, the creature doesn't untap. But if you put that on an aerial responder or something that has lifelink, or you get an Audric in play, or sorry, vigilance, or you get an Audric in play and everything has vigilance, or we play a card like Always Watching, which gives all your creatures +1/+1 in vigilance. This card is really good, especially if the creature you put on has lifelink.
I have a weird reason for not liking that card. So I keep having these, like, you keep bringing up these cards. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, and then I'm like, that sounds like you might kill your opponent with that. And I'm like allergic to cards that say that because I really want to win with Aetherflux Reservoir.
Oh, okay.
And like I want there to be a reason.
I think that it's okay to win with damage, though. I am not opposed to winning the traditional way. I know that the point is to win with the Aetherflux Reservoir, and it will always be cool when you do that. But I don't want to remove the opportunity to kill your opponent the traditional way. I don't want to make choices that specifically draw us away from that possibility, because there are going to be times where we really need to be able to kill our opponent the traditional way because we just won't be able to do it with Aetherflux Reservoir. They're hitting us with way too much damage, and our life gain is keeping us alive, but we're never going to get to that point of 50 life.
I'm just really worried about Emrakul. Like, I don't want to.
So, actually, I realized I wasn't done talking about Anguished Unmaking. Like, the more I think about it, the more I think the card needs to be in the deck, because we need an answer for Planeswalkers. Like, we're just going to be sitting there dirtling, and if we do that, and they're just like, Liliana takes up, and then they just start making zombies and kill us. Like, that's no good. So I think Anguish Unmaking is really necessary in this deck.
Yep, I agree. I think it's in.
Can't really argue with any of that logic. And it's one of those situations where if we're playing a deck that doesn't have Planeswalkers in it, we can sideboard in something more appropriate that doesn't cost us life.
I mean, yeah, if you really didn't like, there's also Ruinous Path, right? If you didn't want to pay the life.
Yeah, there's Ruinous Path, but there's also even a Declaration in Stone.
That kills Planeswalkers?
Doesn't have instant speed, but
that doesn't kill Planeswalkers, though.
No, I'm saying in the event you do not need to kill a Planeswalker.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the only cards that straight up destroy Planeswalkers are Ruinous Path and Anguish Unmaking.
Doesn't Ruinous Path cost double black, though?
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it does.
I mean, if you're really I don't think the mana is going to be that bad, even if we are double cost in 2 colors, because lands are really good at Standard right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of on Dan's side. I mean, to be fair, I do want to limit the number of double black, so there is that. I don't want to overdo the double black. I think we should primarily go white for this deck.
It also depends. I mean, doesn't it depend on like what turn you want the double cost on too? I mean, it's not
sure.
Like if you're playing like, Knight of the White Orchid or whatever, 2 mana, or that red. What's that red card from? Jesus. Let me just look it up, and then I will come back. It doesn't matter. The point is that there are, if we had like a bunch of cards, like if we were playing Grasp of Darkness, we'd probably want to be more black, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, the low mana cost double blacks. I think that we'll be okay with the Anguish Unmaking. Not too worried about it. I don't think there's too many things in double black that I'm really looking hard at for this deck, so I think it's kind of a moot point to begin with.
Okay, so here's a card that doesn't win you the game, Daniel. What do you think about Always Watching in this case, especially for the vigilance with the lifelink creatures?
Wait, that totally wins you the game. It makes all your creatures better at attacking.
Yeah. But it's a 3 mana enchantment that doesn't actually, I guess it's like a permanent pump spell, I guess, when you play it. But I like it with Stitcher's Graft, and I like Stitcher's Graft because it's a 1-drop. So you can spend 1 to cast a spell that is going to be very important for when we're a little bit light on 1-drops right now.
How about some Thrabes? Toss some Thrabes in there.
Yeah. It's never a bad choice.
I mean, we saw how dominant Thrabes was against the Bomat Courier.
That's true.
I mean, if we want to really go hard on this life gaining thing, we could always run Chaplain's Blessing.
I don't.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, you're kidding.
I know, that's a joke. It's a one-mana spell.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah. No, he's kidding. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Chaplain's Blessing, though, Graham, because I feel
Are
like this
you?
is a teachable moment right now. Not to you, because you were joking, but yeah, don't play Chaplain's Blessing. That's my style of teaching. I just tell you not to play a card with no reasoning behind it.
There you go.
Unless you have a way to like copy it a lot of times.
Not even then.
Not even if you just need to push up for that Felidar Sovereign just to get over the top.
Under no circumstances should you play Chaplain's Blessing. We're already playing Chaplain's Blessing. It's called Blessed Alliance, and it also kills a creature. So just play that.
Exactly.
Cost 3 more. Anywho,
did you put Felidar Sovereign in the deck yet?
I think it needs
Colin?
one. Yeah.
or 2.
Yeah, I love Felidar Sovereign in this deck.
I think it's possibly
It costs 6.
Yeah, but
It's a life gain
it's
deck.
like a better Aetherflux Reservoir than Aetherflux Reservoir.
Yeah, dude. I know that you're like really worried about the whole cost.
Well, I'm worried
thing,
about the cost thing just because if we're going to take a full advantage of Aetherflux Reservoir, we want to be able to play more than one spell per turn if we can. So that's why I
really don't think we need to worry about that aspect of that card.
Wait, I got lost in your words. Can you back up a little bit?
yeah. So Aetherflux Reservoir multiplies and multiplies if you play more spells per turn. So
right.
that's why
Right,
I'm thinking like if I'm getting good creatures that are lower on the curve, there's a possibility you can get more. And I'm actually liking, now that we've got Thraven Inspector in there, I'm liking the Clue idea. And since we've got 2 and 3 cost creatures a lot, I'm actually thinking about Bygone Bishop as well to give you more clues.
I mean, maybe. I think you're getting
But
a
is
little off topic at this point.
Well, I have another off-topic suggestion. And this is something, I'm looking at this list of life gain cards, and this card I realized is actually a pretty darn efficient way to gain life, which is Ondu War Cleric, which is the 2/2 ally for 1 and a white. And it says tap an untapped ally you control, gain 2 life. That's a pretty good rate for life gain, repeatable life gain. The problem is we'd have to go more in an ally direction, so I'm not certain that's something we want to do, but I just wanted to put that out there as a possible direction.
Well, if you paired it with Serene Steward, which is whenever you gain life, you may pay 1 white, and if you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. I mean, for the record,
that sounds like
we're all getting.
That sounds like winning the game, Graham.
For the record, I think we're all getting off topic, but.
What was the original topic anyway? I'm not sure we are getting it.
So Colin wants to double down on the clue idea because he wants to fire off the ability of the Aetherflux Reservoir that I really think we need to ignore and treat as
And
an
I think
incidental.
that
I'll
is your
say
first mistake,
again.
sir. I think I will call this out. That is a mistake, and I think that when we're testing this deck, this is the part where I throw down. I'm like, see, this is going to work because I've actually played with this card before.
So you're Colin
Oh, well, see, now you never told me that part.
that he was throwing down. He never told you that.
No, that he was played with it. I've never even played with it. I'm just guessing that that's a useless.
No, you can blank.
You're probably right.
You can blank a smuggler's copter easily every turn. You can blank the trample damage that a Grim Flare does every turn easily with clues and playing cheaper things.
Right, and that just keeps you at even. But in order to get over the top, you're not going to use the Aetherflux first ability. And my point is, what you're trying to do is use it. You want to be.
I want to be alive.
Let's back it up. Let's back up just a hair. On average,
Let's go to the beginning of the show. Actually, let's back up.
how many spells do you think that you can maintain a per turn rate of spell casting? What do you think you can get? 3 spells per turn every turn for multiple turns? Because if you can't do that, it's not really worth it.
I think 1 or 2, and if you can get close to 2, you're doing pretty well, especially once you get 2 of them in play. Because once you have 2 of them in play, you copy your first, you get 1 life twice, and then you get 2 life twice. So that's 6 life for 2 spells. So no, I think I think that
I guess I'm not opposed to the clue idea as long as it really doesn't take us too far away from the rest of the deck. I think because one of the things that we do need to keep into account, we do need to make sure we have cards in our hand. That's important. but I don't want to hold down the curve of the deck just on account of the Aetherflux Reservoir.
No. I was thinking that
ability.
like 4 Thraben Inspectors to make it so that you can hopefully get one early, and 2 Bygone Bishops is just fine. Like, I don't think it's going to be like...
I'm less interested in the Bygone Bishops, and I'll tell you why. Gisela, Felidar Sovereign, Angel of Invention.
Yeah.
All 3 of those creatures cost more than 3 land, and they're minimum like a 2 of each.
Yeah. But to counter that, we have Aerial Responder, we have Eiley, we have Thalia, we have Audric, we have Lone Rider. We're running 4 Lone Riders. We have...
Audric costs 4.
Oh, never mind. Audric costs 4. Yeah. That's why I don't think Bygone Bishop is a 4 of, but I think I'm just afraid of running out of cards. I just don't want to run out of cards.
I am not afraid of running out of cards, but that's because I also don't think that we need to be pushing the first ability of the Aetherflux Reservoir. We're going to be gaining life if we're doing it
But
right.
I'm also
anyway.
not just pushing the first ability. Playing more spells means you can win the game easier. That's something we talked about in power level thing.
yeah.
If you can have more cards and play more spells, you can win the game easier.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. I mean, I would be more interested if we were, I guess, I'm not convinced that the amount of life that you're going to gain from its first ability is worth really putting any energy into activating that
Okay,
aspect of the
then
artifact.
stop focusing on that and just realize that clues give you cards. Because I need cards. I'm worried about running out of cards.
Colin,
I'm not, because we have a lot of expensive cards in the deck. That's why I'm not worried about running out of cards. Okay, I'm on board with the Thrabes, 100%. Colin, if we're going to play a 3-drop that gets us card draw and life, I'd rather play Filigree Familiars.
I do like Filigree Familiar, honestly.
Yeah?
I mean, it doesn't fly, and it's got lower
And it's a
toughness.
one-time.
And it's a one-time.
The card's pretty awesome if you're not wanting to attack and you just want speed bumps.
What kind of deck would you use that in?
Dan wants this one to be that deck.
What, Filigree Familiar?
Yeah, you want speed bumps, right? Because you don't want to win this game.
Well, you can also sacrifice it to Eiley, so you get like the life, and you get to draw a card, and you get to block. I don't know. I don't see how you can lose.
Okay.
If you play an Eiley and a Filigree Familiar, it's game over.
That's true. That's a win condition
Okay.
right there.
You've sold me.
Everybody
I
knows.
will replace my Bygone Bishops with Filigree Familiars. But I'm not super happy about it.
You know what,
I think I just accidentally made the deck worse.
Okay, so here you go, Colin. I will solemnly swear to issue a public apology should we discover, or on next week's podcast, should we discover that the primary ability of Aetherflux Reservoir is really the driving engine behind the life
What?
gain. But I don't believe that's the case.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought you were arguing that the second ability of spending 50 life to do 50 damage was going to be the important one, and I'm pretty sure that's almost never going to happen. I'm pretty sure we're just going to sit here trying to gain enough life from the Aetherflux Reservoir to stay alive.
And we're just going to kill
for the
them with
most
the
part.
Cliffhaven Vampire and Gisela. Like, they're just going to die.
But see, that's my worst nightmare, too. So I'm trying desperately to avoid that scenario right now. Ooh, have we talked about Fumigate at all?
We have not.
No, but that's something we should definitely talk about.
Because I think that card's pretty darn good in this deck.
I do too.
But
No
aren't we
arguments
just
there?
putting out a bunch of creatures that we're just going to kill?
Yeah, but some of them are Thraben
mean-
Inspector, and some of them are Filigree Familiar.
And some of them might be Emrakul.
Oh, some of them that we destroy would be Emrakul?
Yeah, or Spell Queller.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the things we're destroying on their side are going to be really good, even if our creatures are kind of crappy.
Right. Hey, some of our creatures might be Filigree Familiars.
I just said that. That's killing my own Filigree Familiar with a Fumigate sounds like the thing I want to be doing.
Colin, how do you feel about
I'll put
about
one Fumigate in the deck.
Fumigate?
Well, it doesn't sound like he feels that good if he's only putting in one.
No, I think he's.
No, I'm not mad. No, I think actually one is correct for this deck. I don't think you're going to want to do it more than once.
I think you're probably right about that.
Okay, so we'll decide. I will accept your challenge, and hopefully I'll receive that apology once it works. So I'm going to put 2 Bygone Bishops in the deck for now, and then when we're testing, if it's not working or nothing's happening with them, we can swap them out. But I wanted to get your guys' actual read on Always Watching for real, so that we can decide about that one.
I like Always Watching. I like it less than I like Audric. So I think that Aerial Responder is a 4 of, which has Vigilance and Lifelink and Flying, which is just pairs really, 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 really ridiculously nicely with Odric. Same with Angel of Invention. Angel of Invention is also flying Vigilance lifelink. So I think that always watching just becomes +1/+1 to all non-token creatures, which is not nearly
assuming
as
your
good
Odric survives.
for the.
Like,
So I guess I'm not saying no. I guess I'm looking for.
because I mean, the real reason
opinions.
that I think that always watching is good is because of how it pairs with Stitcher's Graft, which I think is a really interesting card for this deck.
I'm not gonna have a ton of argument against it. Let's just put it that way. I do have. Well, what do you think, Daniel?
I don't like it. I don't like always watching. I don't like Stitcher's Craft. I don't like either of those cards in this deck.
Okay. Because you want to be more defensive, and those are offensive.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. I mean I realize that it probably seems like I'm being difficult right now, but I would like to see Aetherflux Reservoir win the game, because if we're saying that's probably not what's going to happen, then
Oh no, you're saying that's not going to happen. That's what I came here to do tonight.
Well, but see, with an always watching, then your aerial responder can block and survive a smuggler's copter, which is defensive. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do like Angel of Invention though. That seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I put one of them in there.
Yeah, let's go back to always watching for a second though, because I think that it does have merit, and I think that maybe we should start with just 2 of them and see how it does. I don't think it's
Yeah,
a
I
4
don't think
of.
it's 4 of either.
But I hate that argument.
maybe-
I hate that argument. This card doesn't really make sense in the deck, so I only play 2.
I think it makes a lot of sense in a lifelink deck where you're trying to get to 50 life, and all of a sudden all these creatures.
But if you get to 50 life with your lifelink creatures, you just kill them.
not if you're blocking and being defensive like you want to be, right?
It makes the Daniel. How about this? It makes the toughness of your sacrificial creatures greater for Eiley.
Isn't there a card that just pumps toughness, like a castle? Isn't there a castle in Standard? That's what I really want.
Moving on, we may need to put a pin. I'm sorry, Colin. We may need to put a pin on always watching. We'll call that an on the fence card, because we really haven't even talked about our fully dialed in our creature base. So can we review where we're at right now? So I see 4 aerial responders, an Angel of Invention, 2 Eileys, 2 Bygone Bishops, 2 Cliffhaven Vampires, 3 Gisellas, 1 Odric, 1 Thalia, and 4 Thrabes. I am not sure about the Cliffhavens. I like Cliffhaven Vampire.
Well, it pairs. It seems like it's pairing perfectly with the Aetherflux Reservoir, because whenever you play a spell, you gain life. Cliffhaven dings, and then whenever you attack or whenever you block with a creature, ding, ding, ding. So I think it pairs nicely.
Did we back off the ally plan? Did you not want Undo War Cleric?
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's the way to go.
If we're gonna go Undo War Cleric, then Cliffhaven Vampire would be the other ally, I think.
What about Drawn's Emissary?
Drawn's Emissary. Yeah, it's not bad.
I mean, we're getting into a whole new deck in general. I mean, if we're gonna go that direction, we might as well just really throw out the idea of winning with Aetherflux Reservoir, use it as an engine to fuel a Cliffhaven Vampire and a Defiant Bloodlord.
Wait a second. That sounds pretty good, actually. Maybe go in more of a Cliffhaven Vampire direction and just have Reservoir there as an extra dressing on the top that can occasionally just win you the game if you manage to gain a lot of life but not kill them.
Right, and in this case, it really just to what you were saying earlier, it basically makes the Cliffhaven Vampire fire off.
Right, Cliffhaven Vampire would just be
spell.
a better Aetherflux Reservoir, basically, where all of your little life gain is pinging them.
Right, the Cliffhaven Vampire piggybacks on top of the Aetherflux Reservoir's first ability.
How do you feel about that, Colin? About using the Reservoir more as the little life gain pips that you get, as opposed to the coup de grace of the
I've been
50 damage.
I've been trying to tell you guys this whole time that that's how the card actually works. So I'm on board.
Yeah, but we didn't care about the first ability. We only cared about the second one.
I'm more of a death blow person than a stiletto man.
I actually kind of like this direction as well, and which makes me really re-examine everything and see what you've done to me, Daniel. Wow, now my head kind of hurts because
Graham's being pulled willy-nilly in all directions.
That provides an excellent segue into a 1-drop card that I think might also be useful for this deck if we choose to go more of the Cliffhaven route, which is not a bad thing to do. So I will eat those words. So many words that I've said tonight. What do you guys think of Authority of the Consuls? A 1-drop, important for Colin's point, enchantment that says creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life, which starts your life drain thing.
I don't like it. I don't think it's worth a card.
You don't think it's worth 1 card?
No.
Gains you life whenever your opponents play creatures.
You gain. That's a trigger for Cliffhaven Vampire.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's.
So if we are going down this route, do we want to put in Drana's Emissaries? Does that make Cliffhaven Vampire an automatic 4 of and Drana's Emissary an automatic 4 of?
I mean, I really like Drana's Emissary. It's a 3 kind of unblockable damage a turn. It combos with Undo War Cleric, which I love in this deck. Yeah,
Do we need to pull out the Angel of Invention? Maybe pull out the Thalia?
I mean, almost pull out.
Hang on, listeners. We're taking a really, really hard left turn. This is the kind of real content you can only get on Mox Team Zirconia's
This
podcast.
deck is live. We are brewing live.
We start building, and you never know where it's going to go. It's going to get crazy.
I feel like, have we built a deck? Have you guys built a deck like this before? Like an ally ping life gain type deck? I feel like,
I've never found one that was strong enough, to be perfectly honest, which is why I went the other way. But I think I'm interested to try it.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe we could do better this time.
That's always our goal, is to do better than the last time.
Oh,
Okay,
nice.
Were you listening to the beginning of the podcast?
Nice callback.
Come on now.
Okay, so still need to cut some creatures here. I guess the bishops are gone, so we don't even get to find out if.
Oh, great! I hate apologizing on podcasts. Oh, are you? Oh, I guess because the. I mean, do you really want? Do you think we? I mean, now we have way more enablers for its ability.
What ability?
The bishop, yeah, because Aerial Responder, Eily, Drana's Emissaries, the 4 Undo War Clerics, and 4 Thrabes. Do we need 3 Gisellas in this iteration of this deck?
No, we probably just want to go down to 2. And we probably don't want Audric anymore.
Yeah, we may not need Audric. Do we want to throw in 1 or 2 Defiant Bloodlords? I know it's a 2 casting cost black, but it really, really helps for its damage-wise.
We really don't want Fumigate anymore either.
No, we probably do not want Fumigate. Did we take out the Felidar Sovereigns? Do we want Felidar Sovereign in this build?
I don't know if we're going to get to 40 life.
Maybe that's a sideboard card for, depending on the deck. If it's easy to get to 40 life, we throw it in there for game 2.
Yeah.
And I actually I'm not sure I want 4 Undo War Clerics. And the only reason I say that is because it only has 8 enablers. So if there's not a Cliffhaven or a Drana's Emissary in play...
But other Undo War Clerics are enablers,
Yeah,
too.
it enables in duplicates.
all right. Well,
So once you
that
do
one.
play Undo War Cleric, you want to play all the Undo War Clerics.
yeah, but I mean, I'm just worried about a situation where it comes into play and it's just a 2-2.
Oh, yeah. That is a relevant fear.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. And that's why I'm wondering if maybe that's a 2 of.
Oh, really? I was going to say maybe that's a reason to play more allies.
Oh. you went the other direction
I'm
there.
not seeing much that, like, in this list right now that's like, this is the defense against Grimflayer. This is the defense against Smuggler's Copter.
Oh, I have your answer right here, and it's the same answer for both. It's called Anguish and Making.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, did we talk about that guy?
We did, yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to lose to them. I think Anguish and Making is important because we can kill Liliana with that. And also, since we gain life, I don't think we're going to die to it as often. We will, like we won't get into a situation where we're like, oh, we're at 2 life. How are we going to play this Anguished Unmaking? We'll gain life and then play Anguished Unmaking. Like, that's how it's going to go. So I think it's better in this deck than it would be in a deck that didn't gain life.
Do we want Stasis Snare?
Yeah, I
still
put
in
him
the
back
deck?
in. I think we do. Yeah.
You did?
I
Okay.
prefer Ruinous Path for the record, but
Okay.
just because I really think Planeswalkers are going to be a problem. Maybe less of one now that we have more flyers, but...
Yeah, I think that the flyers, and we do have a lot of flyers. In fact, there's only 3 things in the deck that don't fly. And that's the Eileys, the Thrabes, and the War Clerics.
Okay, so what's the name of that big one that deals them damage when you gain all the life? What's it called?
Defiant Bloodlord. It is 4/5 for 5 and 2 black, and it says flying. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life.
I think that we're going to want that as a finisher, or we're going to want Angel of Renewal as a finisher, depending on if our matchup allows us to have our creatures out, right?
Do we like Stasis Snare over Blessed Alliance?
Oh, no, we need Blessed Alliance in the deck. Man, we are so high on 3-drops. So let's, look at that list and tell me which 3-drops to cut back on so that we can put Blessed Alliance in the deck.
I mean, really, the main target's going to be the Bishop, because I don't want to lose the aerial responders. Those guys are just sick.